What's up, everybody? It's Spencer Alessi, and this is the Esports Narrative. This is episode 5, and today we're talking with Marty Laser Chicken Strenczewilk. A longtime veteran of the entertainment world, Marty Laser Chicken Strenczewilk worked in theater, film, and television for over 10 years, primarily in New York City. Esports started as a passion when he began writing blogs and writing class guides for World of Warcraft. He landed his first esports gig at a startup where he led production on one of the most successful first-time broadcasts of a World of Warcraft tournament. He then went on to found Splyce in the winter of 2014 with his wife, his longtime friend, and I believe a software developer as well. Correct me if I'm wrong there.
Not a co-founder, but employee number 1 and still part of us today.
Awesome. And I just want to highlight, since founding Splyce, it was the winter of 2014, beginning of 2015, correct?
Yes. So the simple way to put it is in the fall of 2014 is when kind of the ideation came together, when I called my old friend Vinny and kicked around the idea. We didn't actually formalize, incorporate till April of 2015, but we were starting to work on the product, in the fall and into the winter of that year.
Awesome. And that's one thing that I want to touch on after this, but I really want to highlight that since founding Splyce in 2015, Marty and his team of players and managers and coaches and staff have gone on to become a world-class and top organization globally. They're competing in 8 titles, is that right now?
That's right. 8
titles. They've won a Blizzcon in WoW PvP. They've got multiple top 5 finishes and a win already in Call of Duty this year at Columbus Stage 1. A win at Dreamhack Atlanta in Halo just at the end of July. And many other top finishes across many other titles that they compete in. So really a broad spectrum of games that you guys play in. Now, if there's anything I missed, or fill in a little bit of the gaps there, Marty, if you could, or something that I missed along the way.
So the only specific game titles that I think we're all proud of, obviously, is our other 2 titles. StarCraft, we're probably the best StarCraft team in the world, which is pretty crazy considering how Korean telecoms have always dominated that. With TY Stats and Solar, we have SSL, GSL, IEM, all kinds of titles between the 3 of them. They're some of the most feared players in all of StarCraft. And then, of course, Marvel vs. Capcom, which was a big thing for us. We picked up Ryan LV, and he continued his absolute dominance in that game by going almost undefeated all the way to the title of EVO. So it's been a pretty awesome year as far as titles go.
And those are 2 that I really wanted to leave out because I wanted to hear you express your passion for those, because I know that those are two big titles that are they're mainstream, I would say, but StarCraft definitely is not as popular in North America by far, and the fighting games are kind of a smaller, eclectic community. And with that being said, what does esports mean to you, and is that different in different areas of the world that Splyce competes in?
Ooh, those are 2 very separate questions, so I'll address them one at a time. For me, I'm 38. I'm kind of old for esports, which is funny to say 38 is old, but it's true. I'm usually around people that are many decades younger than me. And so I grew up having an original Atari, Sega Genesis, Nintendo original, etc. Very first PC game I played was a word game, where you say, turn left. And he goes, you can't do that. Turn right, you can't do that. So I've been gaming since I was, 7 years old. But back when you had a joystick or a green and white DOS system. And I grew up in a very small town focused around sports. So I was a heavy sports fan. Football, tennis, basketball. I couldn't get enough sports because that's what I had access to. And then when I got older, and I worked in entertainment for a long time, as you mentioned, so entertainment's kind of been in my blood. But I got back heavy into gaming after I left New York City and was kind of pulling back on the entertainment career. And I found that there's this competitive side. And I was like, oh my God, that fills 2 of my favorite things, gaming and competitive. And it was interesting because for someone who's when I say I'm a massive NBA fan, I mean I'd watch 4 to 5 times a week, a lot of NBA. And I haven't watched an NBA game outside of Kobe's retirement and a couple of Spurs playoff games as my favorite team in probably the last 2 years. Because it really filled that need for me, that hunger inside for competition, mixed with just my absolute love for many decades of video games. As for what it means in different regions, I think that is an interesting kind of point that it's a little different. Like in Korea, for example, it's part of pop culture. It's really fascinating how you'll have your 14-year-old girls who are excited about meeting a StarCraft or a League of Legends player, not Justin Bieber, right? Versus you go to a place like the U.S. where there's different kinds of esports. I'll say definitions where if you get into it's very much that analytical, nerdy gamer thing, which I love. I'm a huge nerd. I love that kind of thing. But there's also the kind of, I'll call it the bro side of things, right? Where you get into games like Call of Duty and console like Halo, Gears of War especially, Street Fighter, things like that really have an arcade feel to them, or a feel just 4 dudes hanging out on the couch, punching each other in the shoulder and playing some competition. And I think that's really, really awesome that there's those very how do we say, there's these very unique feelings depending on where you go and what games you're talking about when you talk to esports. Kind of no different than traditional sports, because to say what is sports, right, means a lot of different things from what game, what region you're talking about. So.
Yeah, and I heard you mention Gears of War, and one of the things that I just wanted to ask as a side is, you guys obviously now publicly, I think it was a month or two ago, maybe even shorter, you made the difficult decision that you guys were going to release the Gears of War team. And my question is, how do you determine if a game is worth the continued investment, or how do you determine if a game is worth a new investment kind of thing? And how do you gauge that? Because things are constantly changing. There's new trends. A game could really take off. What do you as an organization look for in a game, or what kind of aspects do you look for from an organizational standpoint?
So I think the easiest way to answer that question is I'll use some actual examples of games we've gotten into, because it varies pretty widely. I actually once heard Steve Aronsat try to answer this question too, and I remember laughing a little bit because I know your pain, Steve, right? It's not a simple explanation of if you meet these 4 criteria, we'll be in your game, So I'll use the game or the genre of fighting games. So last year is what I would call was the coming out moment for the power fighting games between ESPN, between the major stage appearance at EVO being in Mandalay Bay and just blowing that out of the water from what CEO has become. You really started to have some of these really great moments that were further reaching than the FGC. They were really reaching much broader audiences. And so something we started talking about internally was that I believe that 2017 was going to be the year of fighting games. If you'll look back every year, there's 1 or 2 games that's their year. I think 2015 was really a year for Smash, and 2016 was the year of Counter-Strike, very clearly. 2017 has been very heavily a year of Call of Duty, and I think fighting games. And you're seeing it with things like E-League. You're seeing it with the focus from the actual Capcom folks and how they're broadening what they're working on. But so looking at that game, there's a few things. Number one, what is the potential cost to get in? That's always a thing. So, fighting games that you're going to have to pay travel and stuff because those aren't part of covered costs like it might be in larger league games like League of Legends, Counter-Strike, things like that. So that's something to consider. Number two is what's the caliber of player/teams we're capable of getting. Getting in a game like League of Legends, let's say, or Counter-Strike is actually a great example. You don't get to jump in and be a top team in Counter-Strike. It's just unless you're spending just insane amounts of money, it just doesn't happen, right? Because it's very competitive to get the best players. But in a game like Street Fighter, we had opportunity to go get an absolute legend like we did with Filipino Champ and sign him. So that's really powerful to our brand, is that we want to be able to we want to be at the top of games now. We're in a different position as an organization than we were 2 years ago. So we want to be signing talent that matches that championship pedigree. Number three can be about a lot of brand personality. Sometimes I think I'll jump a game for a second here. Halo is a great example. We looked at Halo for a while, but we weren't sure. We knew it was nice. It would have been great to complete the portfolio of console games, but it didn't. There was nothing excited us until Shotzi came along, and then you have this 15-year-old kid who's brash. He knows he's the best, and then he proves it time and time again. He's cold as ice, this kid, and I was like, I want that kid playing under our banner, you know? And so we bring the organization in, then we attach it with Renegade, who's another young kid doing it, and boom, what do we got? Like this incredibly young duo coming up and dominating Halo. And so it's never like formulaic in nature. It's a lot of different pieces coming together. The revenue portion I didn't even touch on, but of course that's a big part of it. How can we make money in a game? You look at a game like Gears of War, it's very violent. I love it. I don't care that it's violent, but unfortunately sponsors do. That's going to be different than a game like Overwatch, right, which is very non-violent. So that's those all are factors for us. I think the final piece I'll say is, of course, the scene itself, like what kind of exposure, what kind of viewership numbers, like is it growing? And I think to me the biggest thing is not is it a big game now, but can it be a big game? Because, you know, I'll take an example of some of our older games. Hearthstone is now an older game as an example, right? Like I don't think anyone out there is going, wow, Hearthstone keeps growing year over year, it's blowing up. Like this is what Hearthstone is, right? Versus, let's say, Call of Duty, which really is growing and really is expanding, and I truly think can sell stadiums at some point. That kind of allows you to figure out our level of investment in a game is what we think we can get out of it from a monetary standpoint, from a relationship standpoint, from a championship pedigree, and from partnership building type of relationship.
Now, we've talked a lot about the successes and accomplishments, and Splyce has a number of accolades and a number of different titles. Tell me, what's been one of the worst moments for you so far in this journey?
That one that sticks out really, really brightly is, of course, being relegated out of ESL Pro League. So we qualified for the Columbus Major last year. It was our first major in Counter-Strike. We were really excited. And after finishing the major, we all understood it was our Cinderella run. We overperformed, if you will. And we said, look, we want to continue to do that. We want to give this team the ability to succeed. So we want to swap out some players and raise the skill ceiling in this team. And in Counter-Strike, that's really hard because there's really no off-season to do it, and there's a time when there's free agents. It's really hard. You have lots of transfers in that game over any other game because of that. And so we took that risk, and the risk was that it was going to take time to build out chemistry and find the right people. And so we bring in Asilian and Crucial and Machine Gun, and that team didn't work out. And so we're starting to swap in parts. First it was Machine Gun going and swapping, then it was Asilian going and swapping, and then it was Crucial going and swapping. But all that takes time to find the right build of unit. In fact, today you'll notice we still have 3 players on the roster. We finally have 3 we're just really confident, like those are core pieces. But a year later, and we don't have the full 5 still. And being relegated was not just a sign of, okay, revenue going down or opportunities to be on the big stage or whatever. For us, it was a sign of failure for us as an organization, that we were unable to find the winning combination, put our players in a place to succeed, and it felt really like disappointing isn't even the word for it, but like our fans shouldn't have to live through that. And so I think that really affected the way we thought about Counter-Strike going forward and building things slowly over time. And you've seen like our progress going through Premier, getting qualified back in, starting to put the right pieces in place to now we went from 1 to 2 to 3 of the pieces we want long term. And that we've learned from it. But man, at the time that was tough.
Yeah, and I really respect not only from a fan, but from someone who looks at leadership and that kind of thing. I really respect that you as an organization are not afraid to take those steps back, take those lashes, if you will, and really take your licks and really try and work on the foundations again and build that up from ground level and really work on that. I think a lot of people can learn from that, and that it's not going to happen overnight, and it takes time, it takes patience, and it takes grinding it out, and I think that's really an important lesson. Going kind of in the opposite direction, what's been the biggest accomplishment so far?
I'm going to go off the field on this one, and I'd say it's having built out the staff we have here at Splyce. That I think we have a powerhouse staff. I think we have people who are incredible at what they do and love working here and make this place function in a way that wouldn't be possible otherwise. Right now it's 8:45 at night on a Thursday, and our logistics manager and our travel agent are booking flights right now. This is
What?
like it's a we don't sleep type of mentality a little bit. Sorry, what was your question?
No, I apologize for interrupting, but I think that's a really important thing, and it's something I wanted to hit on is why do you think that is? Why do you think they're late working at it? What is the reason for that?
So I'd say a couple things. Number one, we have a really flexible schedule, which allows people to work when they want to, which is great. So it's not, be up at 8:30 to 5, Monday through Friday, et cetera. And a lot of the job requires you don't do that. But also there's a passion. Like people love what they do at our company. And so you've got our very first employee, like we were talking before, is a developer. His name is Jeff. And Jeff was employee 1. We brought him in January 2015, I believe. He's been with us ever since, as a contractor first and then an employee. And Jeff's the guy who you want something done, and he comes back to you and goes, I did that, but I also did these other 4 things because I thought they'd be really, really cool and smart. And it's not, he doesn't ever do the bare minimum, right? He's always like, what else can I do that would make this even more awesome? And it's because he truly loves the product he's building, which is our web product, and truly loves the team and organization. So I think to me, the real accomplishment, if you will, is to have made a workplace that people like to work and are really excited about going to work and love working with each other.
So it sounds like it's kind of a mix of tactics and religion, if you will. Like it's the high level vision of what you're creating and what you're able to, bleed out in passion, and people are attracted to that. And it's specific things that tactically help you with the vacation or the work hours and things like that are attractive to people who want to work in that kind of environment. I really respect from an organizational standpoint that kind of structure, and I admire the type of organizations that are able to draw talent like that. I think it's really cool.
Yeah, I think to your point about the little perks, if you want to call them, we try to make not dumb perks, let's say, right? Because there's all those jokes.
Sure.
You watch things like Silicon Valley where look, we have massages and we'll do your laundry for you. And it's that's cool and all. But I'd rather work at a workplace where, for example, the CEO is always available for anybody that needs to, you don't have to go through a chain of command to get to me if you need me.
Uh-huh.
And also that there are tons of individual opportunities for growth where you can plan out your path to things you really want to do, and there are opportunities for you to really see the fruits of what you create out there, right? If you work on something, you get to see it really be successful and affect the organization. And that's always part of being a small company too. Is that the fruits of your labor don't become a document somewhere. They become something that they become a piece of merchandise a fan wears, or a banner that goes on a social media account, or a video that's headlining a new team we're launching. All those kind of things. So I think that's a really big driving force, is that the work you do matters. You know what I mean?
Absolutely, and that really hits home the personal aspect of it. Like you said, your door is open to your employees and your staff, and I think that's the most important thing is just being there and kind of being a resource for your staff and helping them grow, because if they're happy and they're loving what they do, they're passionate about what they're doing, they're gonna ultimately help the company succeed.
Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, we've grown and scaled to the point where I think we're at 30 players and about 25 staff members of various capacities, part-time, full-time, et cetera. And I no longer can touch on a daily basis every single staff member and every single player, right? I can't have that interaction. I used to be able to do that. It's just not possible. Now I have to rely upon other people to have those interactions, but also for people to feel empowered to drive new initiatives forward, to figure out what should the next great thing working on be, to take ownership. That's really the thing we talk about. So not to get too far off track, but I'll tell you a little story. So we had a summit, as we called it, about a month ago, where we brought our senior leaders out to Rochester, New York, where our headquarters are. And for 2 days, we dove into a lot of strategy-related stuff, and people gave different presentations on things they're working on. We talked about the future of the company. But what really came out of that, I think, mostly was this drive towards stronger ownership, where people feel like they can make decisions, and it's not always Marty's decision, right? That people feel empowered to say, I trust you with this thing, just go execute on it, following our vision. And one of the big parts of that has been the fact that we are truly building up a brand, and that's something I don't think a lot of esports do. We have an actual branding expert who works with us that's been working for about 3 or 4 months now on what is the Splyce brand, what's our mission, what's our vision, what are our pillars, and we've gotten really far along with that, to the point where I think that we'll be able to really, even better in a few months, hand something to, let's say, a new employee or employee working on a new project and say, this is the guiding principle for what Splyce is and what we believe. So whatever project you're working on, you always know what you can reflect back on to wonder if you're on the right track or not. You don't have to be told, because you understand what those principles are, which great companies have, right? Like, great companies understand, whether it's an Apple or someone like Airbnb, these companies that have defining characteristics. If you can put that great brand in place, your companies will begin. Your employees will begin to lead without your direction.
And now we've talked about the human element. We've talked about the brand and the titles that an organization associates with. Is there anything else that is like the crux of what makes a esports organization successful that we haven't touched on yet?
I think that the toughest thing that people haven't started doing is stepping outside of traditional I heart esports talent, I call it. Meaning, if somebody's like, oh, I love esports, I'll just work really hard, but they don't actually bring a specific skill, meaning that they've done it in the real world. So a Bryce Blum, who is a lawyer, right? He isn't just, I love esports, he's actually a lawyer. Or someone like Jacob Wolf, who's actually a reporter. He's not just, I love esports, I want to write about it. He has actually been working on his writing for a long, long time. We've tried to make those hires lately, which are people either that have maybe less esports experience or none at all. For example, our recent VP of content, who's been with us about 4 or 5 months now, and is really building on developing that division. He came in as a gamer, but he knew very little about esports, other than he knew it was a new frontier that was really exciting. And so there was a learning curve there. We had to spend some time getting up to speed, teaching him a lot. But he is a juggernaut in our organization now for driving things forward, because he has 20 years of experience working at places like MTV, the Olympics, Bell Media, Discovery Channel. Like, you can't find that in esports. And if you have the right mix of great esports like acumen, for the people I have who are like former pros or coaches, managers, etc., with guys like that who bring incredible skill sets outside the industry, you end up with that perfect mix of great talent. And I think you too often see so-and-so organization has hired gamer ABC whose whole resume is, I've been a gamer, and they're going to be the VP of Ops. And I was like, what do you know about operations? I've worked in corporate America. I worked in between my entertainment career and this. I worked in a manufacturing plant. I had a multi-million-dollar budget. It was a billion-dollar company. I was a junior-level executive. Like, I've been there. I've seen what a real VP of Ops looks like, what a real CFO looks like, what a real CEO looks like. And these are people that don't just put a moniker on themselves, but they have real exceptional skill sets there in building out operational plans, finance plans, projections, P&Ls, and those are what really drives business. So I think you're going to start seeing, I mean, we already are seeing it, but you'll continue to see more and more of a divide between the orgs who hire just some guy that's excited or some gal that's excited about esports, and somebody that has maybe less of that experience in esports and a ton of real world experience to bring in, and you do a really good mix and match of that. You end up with a much better, stronger team because they teach each other the appropriate skills. The non-esports people teach the esports people job and business skills, and the esports people teach the non-esports people what all the key things you need to know about esports.
Now, I know this is probably a longer-winded question than maybe we really have time for, but one of the things I was curious on, there's a lot of debate on different titles getting different levels of prize money. Let's say like fighting games, much less prize money than Counter-Strike and different titles like that. How do you then compare an organization, or how do you gauge the success of an organization, and is that even possible right now in the current state of things to compare an organization, or is it even a worthwhile investment to do that at all, or to see where other organizations are at and kind of get a gauge of how successful one is versus another?
Yeah, so the funny part about this is, of course, I know what you're referencing, a tweet I had back and forth with Clerky, who I've known for a long time. We're good friends. But I have a good example of how challenging this conversation is. So Todd Mary, who's the Chief Marketing Officer of Delaware North. Delaware North is obviously our strategic partner and investor. And he's our main esports guy over there. He's the guy we interface with. And Todd is a massive Dota fan. Loves, eats, breathes Dota. He's at the International right now. That's where Todd is, taking his son. And I have watched 10 minutes of Dota in my life. It's not a game I've gotten into. Very big League of Legends fan. I'm watching League of Legends for years. And so we have that very opposite taste when it comes to MOBAs. And Todd is what I would call a casual esports fan, where he really loves his one specific game, sort of has some ideas about the other ones, but he's not like me where I'm watching tons of different games and really in depth in the industry. He is because he works with us, but not because of his consumption habits. His consumption habits are purely Dota, pretty much, other than seeing some Splyce matches, of course, because he's well mentally invested now. And Todd, said to me one day, I can't remember what tournament it was, but Team Liquid had just won this Dota tournament. And he's like, oh, Team Liquid's so amazing. And I was like, are they good in Dota? Because I honestly didn't know. And he said, yeah, dude, they're incredible. And that's his favorite Dota team, et cetera. He's unabashedly a Team Liquid supporter. And I said, it's so fascinating because I think of Team Liquid as a pretty mediocre team because they're abysmal at League of Legends right now. It's not always been the case, but right now they're a bad League of Legends team. No one will argue that. They're ranked 50th out of 50 or something like that. And it's a thing where if we were talking basketball, let's go back to basketball. San Antonio Spurs, New York Knicks. I'm a Spurs fan first. I'm a Knicks fan second because I've lived in New York a long time. You and I would have no issues discussing that the Spurs are better than the Knicks, right? That's just straightforward. You might have some lunatic from New York who's trying to argue that there's potential there, but no sane person is going to argue that the Spurs aren't better than the Knicks, right? But in multi-gaming organizations, how do you gauge who's the better quote-unquote organization? Let's take Optic for a second. Optic is absolutely dominant in the few titles they're in, but they're only in a few titles. Does that make them less good than someone who's in 9 or 10 titles and is winning at maybe a 50% clip, right? So I don't know if there's a straightforward answer to this across games. Is Splyce a better org than ABC org? I don't think you can answer that. I think we do a really good job of creating great drama around the ESPN League of Legends Power Rankings, which is super fun, the HLTV Counter-Strike rankings, the MIOM Smash Melee rankings. All those things are really, really fun for the community, really fun for the orgs and stuff to get all gassed up about and talk about, and that makes great conversation. But it's really difficult to say, here's what I've accomplished. Going back to the topic of prize money, though, which I think is a separate conversation, I think this is actually a non-endemic problem with esports. People love to talk about the international, right? People love to go, it's great timing for us to have this conversation. They love to go, oh, look at this prize point. What are we at, 24 million or something for the international this year, 25?
Yeah, it's insane.
Yeah, so they go, look at all this money in esports. And the immediate response from anyone in esports should be, that's just one tournament, and no one else is anywhere near that. Not even close. The next one down, I think, is 2 million. That's the gap, right? And so that implies the international is 13 times more valuable than that next tournament down. No, everyone knows it's just not true. The international is not 13 times more valuable to win as far as to your organization, money-wise, sure. But I'm saying, like, of the quality of organization than the next tournament down of, like, a Counter-Strike event or whatever it is, right? I think League of Legends Worlds is the next one at $2 million, if I'm not mistaken. So is that really a gauge of success? I would say no. I think if you look at winning first place in things in general is absolutely a gauge of success. If you are winning, let's pick a title we're not in, Rocket League, right? So if you're winning Rocket League events and there's a lot of tough competition and it's hard to get good players and you've built over time, you're consistently just crushing people, that's an accomplishment. It doesn't matter that Rocket League isn't as big as Dota with audience or prize money. It's you've dominated there. I think that is a misnomer that the size of the prize pool matters. It's kind of a dick measuring contest is what it is. Look at how big mine is. And I personally, like, if that's your goal, if that's what you're trying to accomplish, I have a hard time getting with that because at the end of the day, my goal is to win championships, not to win prize money, right? My goal is to let's put it this way. Second place at the international is far more lucrative than first place at most tournaments. I'd much rather have first place at those less lucrative tournaments. No question, every time.
And it's about legacy, too. It seems like what you're after is kind of that legacy conversation of you want to leave a lasting legacy of being a championship organization who wins, like you said, and has those accolades of not just winning, not just having the most money, but having the best organization in terms of championships and winning legacy and great players and great staff and, you know, great people. That definitely seems like that's the vibe I get.
Yeah, there's a during that summit I was telling you about, I opened the summit by showing a bunch of pictures, and I just asked people to say what they saw, and then I showed them what I thought about, the whole idea was changing the narrative. So a lot of times they'd see something, they'd say one thing, and I'd show them what I thought, and everyone would go, oh, wow, yeah, I hadn't thought of it that way, right? Like I showed a picture of some of our fans, and they were looking at it and they're like, oh, our fans, engagement, whatever, but what I written was our bosses, right? Like that's who we report to is the fans. As an example of that, how that was. And one of the slides I showed a picture of us getting second place at Gfinity. It showed a picture of us getting second place at another tournament, second place at a few different places. So it showed the first place winner. So it showed first place. And everyone was confused because there was no Splyce up on the stage. And everyone was like, this, and that. I showed them, all it said is no one remembers second place. Right? No one knows we came in second place at those events because no one cares. And at the end of the day, like if your goal is to build not just an organization for fans that want like to win championships and love and be proud of, but for players to want to play there, number one matters. Being number one matters.
Absolutely. Now this is the part of the show where I call the five question combo breaker. Just give me your first thing that comes to your mind. Best advice someone has ever given you.
It's called Do Things That Don't Scale. It's a Paul Graham blog. Read it, embrace it. I know it's about technology, but it applies to every company, everywhere, and it's the best advice.
Awesome. What do you think the esports industry needs to continue to grow and be successful?
Real monetization. And what I mean by that is it's cool that we have some of the ones we do right now, but I think that expanding out beyond the 5 or 6 channels we have currently to not just mirror traditional sports, but go way past them. We're a digital-first sport. We can do so much more with monetization that isn't just increased sponsorships, but it's actually open new channels.
Now, as a sidebar to that, you guys have obviously joined WESA. What are some potential revenue paths that you were speaking about in your YouTube video that you released? What are some potential revenue sources that haven't been explored or maybe haven't been explored as further as they could be?
I think one of the biggest ones is certainly this idea of being the official XYZ of a large group of teams in a very official capacity. And that's the next step to sponsorship, right? So I've got these multivitamins here on my desk, and if I'm the multivitamin company, I can imagine them like sponsoring Splyce is cool and it's great. We'll do great work with them, etc. But their reach is only so much as how successful Splyce is in that given year, and every team's going to have off years, etc. But imagine they can be the official multivitamin of all WESA teams. They're represented across all these games, all these regions, all these players and genres and types, etc. I think that's powerful. I was talking to a friend of mine who works for ESPN once, and she said one of the biggest powers of the NFL, the NBA, etc. offer is when you sponsor them instead of just the team, you gain the fact that no matter who's good, your brand is associated with winning. Because if the Warriors win the championship or the Spurs win the championship, it doesn't matter. You're associated with all 30 teams. And I think that's the next real major step. I think also just the way we interact with leagues is a great place to develop as well. EPL was a great first step, right? In the way that there's some real revenue opportunities that now there that didn't used to be. But I think even beyond that, when you start looking at all the other leagues we're interacting with, we're better as a group because we can bring not just the collective force in a negative way, but bring the positives of being a collective group as well.
Now, you're a gamer at heart, so what's the best play you've ever seen or the most memorable moment for you in esports?
Well, because I have my own team, I'm super biased, and it's for my organization. But it has to be Vance's play in the waterfall last year when he came through, got the one kill, bounced back out, came back at the other one. It basically changed that game. It was one of those mind-blowing moments. I'm in the arena at the COD Champs, surrounded by tons of people, going nuts, losing my mind. I still rewatch that sometimes and just can't believe he had the composure to pull that off.
You've already shared some valuable resources, but what's one valuable resource that's been really beneficial to you in your career?
So there's this really great video series on YouTube called Startup School. And if you never heard of Y Combinator, they are the foremost incubator of companies in the world, basically. They churn out some amazing companies over there, companies like Dropbox, for example. And they I think it was maybe 3 or 4 years ago, taught a class at Stanford, full normal class, and then just video record it. So it's just a static camera on the screen, but the teachers are amazing. We're talking the founders of Reddit, the founders of LinkedIn, the founders of Facebook, the founders of all these great companies are literally teaching each of these different classes. So if you want to learn about how to start a great company and what people failed at, what they did wrong, right, etc., watch those videos, take it in, absorb, and then follow it up with a lot of book recommendations. There's so many good books out there that go along with it. My personal favorite, I always toss this to everyone that they ask, is The Hard Thing About Hard Things. You want a killer book on starting a company, that's the one to start with.
What's been one habit that's been the biggest factor for your success?
For me personally, or for the company?
It doesn't matter. Either or.
Okay. For me personally, I think it's been getting myself organized. So I worked in manufacturing and discovered what's called the lean methodology, which is a manufacturing technique that turns an organization very efficient, reduces waste, all that kind of stuff like that. And I left and I came back to the entertainment world and I brought a lot of those learnings with me. And one of those is around how you structure your day. And so, for example, people always laugh when I tweet this, but I keep a fairly empty inbox. It's very typical to be empty. Right now, I'm going to look. I actually am up to 6 email, and that's a ton for me. That's only because 4 of them have come in since an hour ago. So I would only have 2 in there. Normally keeping it empty because that's not where your emails belong. You should do something with them. There's rules around this, and I could spend all night talking about it. But I use task software, and I really your task software is only as good as you are committed to it. So you can put all the tasks in the world in there, but if you're not committed to using it, then it won't matter anyway. And I live, eat, and breathe by the software called Asana that we use internally. That software is the lifeblood of our company. And I think by staying committed to using it, I'm in Asana 20 times a day, maybe more on average. It has allowed us to be incredibly more efficient with smaller staff than we would be otherwise, because we have efficient communication, efficient passaging of resources, whether it's digital art or stuff like that, because it's all really well organized. And I've worked at companies before where this stuff was just all over the place, and the amount of time you lost just because someone forgot to do something, someone can't remember where they put this thing, someone forgot to tell that guy that thing, is astounding. So I think that just getting organized and really being focused on the daily routine of cleaning out your email box, setting your tasks, doing your tasks, and holding yourself accountable to it.
Awesome. We're going to close out the show now with you giving us a little bit of your perspective on, from the CEO standpoint, what life as a CEO of an organization, a gaming organization, is like, and what it takes to kind of be on top of your game and continue to be successful, and share, with the listeners where people can engage with you.
Sure. So I remember hearing this once from a VC, and I think this is 100% true. And for those that don't know this, I think that it's a mistake a lot of CEOs make. You have 4 jobs as a CEO. One is raising money, and that may sound crazy that that's a major job, but it is. Because if you're not raising money, you're making sure you're in condition to raise money. You have the right materials to raise money, and you're making those relationships to later raise money. Okay. Number 2 is business development. There is no better salesman for your company, no better spokesperson than the CEO and founder. And that is your job, number 1. It isn't some salesperson you hired. It's your job to go sell as the company. Number 3 is finding great people. So staffing your organization is incredibly important, because those are the people that are going to be interfacing with other people who are putting out the product that will represent your brand. And then number 4 is developing culture. And culture is such a weird word, because what does it mean, and how do you develop culture and stuff? And this is something that when I was in manufacturing was my main focus, was around culture building. And because I worked in safety and environmental, I was a tree hugger, so that's what I went off and did, try to make the world a little bit better. And it was a fun 6-year stint, but I'm glad to be back in entertainment. But what's really interesting is that culture is really challenging to change and shift, but very, very powerful if you can do it. And I've seen some just gorgeous cultures over the years at companies. I've seen cultures of places where they take absolute pride in how gorgeous their facility is, how awesome their product is, and how amazing it is to consider yourself an employee of that company. And when you can get to that level, man, your company just runs like butter at that point. Like you're no longer struggling with these firefighting day in and day out, because there's this almost magic dust that you can't put your finger on. Again, it's culture, right? That is really driving force in your company. So you're constantly tweaking it. You're constantly figuring out how to make it better, constantly keeping a pulse on your company. So that's the 4 amorphous kind of, not really amorphous, but like very high level things you're doing. On a more like day to day, I'm interfacing with players is a very big thing. I keep a very close relationship with a lot of my players, so I'm talking to them very commonly, even sometimes just joking with them, sending memes and making jokes and things like that over Skype or Discord or Twitter DMs or you name it, in person if I'm at an event, like I'll be at COD Champs next week. I have a lot of interface with my content department, making sure that the message they're doing is shaped in a way that of what I want the company to be, making sure I'm giving them constant feedback, interfacing with the design and web development department about what new features we're launching on the website, what type of launch procedure we want to go through, how can we improve the launch over last time. Meetings with outside clients is always a big one. We're looking at a couple of awesome new sponsors we're working with right now, and we're very early stages with one, and we're a little further along with another, et cetera. But those are all delicate balancing acts of getting them the right materials they need and building out the proper documents to send over, having those meetings. Lots of flying. I fly a ton, and that's just the nature of needing to be on 3 continents and needing to be in so many different locations, and it's a big part of it. And then finally, touch points with just staff in general. So I'll have a quick 10-minute meeting with my fighting games manager, and a quick 15-minute call with a social media guy, and a quick 10-minute chat with Jenna, who runs our website and our giveaways and fan interaction stuff. And a lot of it's like quick touch point stuff like that. But that stuff's really valuable to make sure that I've got a pulse on what's going on with them personally, be with their department, with whatever they're doing, and see. So what I believe the company is constantly infused throughout the organization. And I think this is a Steve Jobs kind of moment, is that he used to say that if any day he didn't have at least 2 hours, I think it was, to just do nothing, was a failure of a day. And the reason was because he would spend those 2 hours just walking around the plant, looking at things, talking to people, and it was the most important part of his day. And it was how he kept a pulse on the company, how he really understood what he was working with, got time to think, time to reflect, time to make decisions that will affect the future of his employees. So I think the last thing I'll say about that is I am a big advocate of making sure that you take time to properly think through major decisions. I mean, sometimes not even major. Like right now, we're deciding on a new office. We're moving our headquarters to a new office. We're moving out of the incubator into our own offices, and we have these two very different vibes of opportunities. And we spent a lot of time looking, talking, got on a 45-minute call today and just dug through and finally made a decision. But that, if we didn't take the time both to think offline and have those discussions and just hastily just pick one, well, that affects so many things, and it's so far-reaching. I think that's just finding the time, the downtime to think sometimes is really valuable. And where you can engage me, anybody that knows on Twitter, you can always come talk to me there. I'm very accessible. We have a rule in our company. It says until we are physically incapable, we will engage with every comment, every tweet, every Facebook post, etc., humanly possible, aside from, of course, the obvious trolls, although sometimes I like to engage with those too. And so you can always catch me there, Laser Chicken with a Z and then ZZ on the end, 3 Zs. And I'm also on Facebook, though I do that less often. Instagram, same thing. And I'm pretty active on my YouTube, but I don't have a cool link. You can get the link from my Twitter because it's like YouTube/XY3294 or some crap like that. But I do a lot of very short 4 to 6 minute videos about different parts of the industry, my thoughts about it, and also learnings, because people are always asking me for advice and stuff. So and then on Reddit, I'm on there when there's stuff going on. So you'll see
the trolls on Reddit, right?
Oh, there was one the other day where I said, I'm not going to, okay, God, I got to. And I just went at it,
Yeah, I hear you. The internet can be charming and ruthless at the same time.
Sure can.
Thank you so much, Marty, for being on the show and sharing your esports narrative with the listeners. I really appreciate it. I always get a lot of value both from your YouTube videos and your comments on Twitter, and I look up to you a lot as someone in esports who, coming from me, someone who knows really nothing about esports yet, has always been a gamer, but not knowing a lot about the industry intuitively from what you put out on the internet and the things you talk about and the things that you're passionate about and that are important to you. I intuitively feel like you're someone who really has their head on straight and knows how to run an organization to be a championship level organization. And I just want to thank you again for being on the show, and I really appreciate it.
Thanks for having me, and I appreciate the kind words. It's the reason I'm able to do the job I do is because there's people out there that think we're doing a good job, that want to be fans of the team, and without fans, there isn't much of a team. So I'll say that the thing that I'm looking forward to most right now is next week when I head to COD Champs again and get to stand on that floor as people slowly gather around, and we create our own little group of people that are just excited to be there and experience great esports. And to me, that is the quintessential piece that without you guys out there watching and being there in an event side by side with me, there's no point in doing what I do. So thanks for having me on, and thanks for the support.
Thank you. I appreciate it. And good luck at Champs. And there's so much more that we could talk about, and we'll have to have you on again sometime if you're willing. And with that, I just really appreciate it. Good luck at Champs, and we'll talk to you again sometime. Thank you, listeners. I really appreciate you. It would mean the world to me if you subscribed and shared the show. Your word of mouth is amazing.